Good evening and welcome to the East Anglian Air Ambulance 2022 Year in Review. I probably don't need to introduce myself because nearly all of you are avid fans of mine who I'm sure are back to see my lovely face after last year's sensational performance. For the new fans amongst you, however, it's a pleasure to meet you. My name is Liam, and when I'm not presenting here, I am a critical care paramedic with the East Anglian Air Ambulance. Some might say that the CCPs are the backbone of the operation here, the constant strength, the fountain of knowledge and youth. The doctors will tell you that we're simply there to restock their bags and organise their admin. Nevertheless, we are all delighted to welcome you to our Year in Review. This event is delivered both hybrid formats, which means we're thrilled to welcome you in person and online. Now, tonight's event will last around 1 hour. We'll cover the highlights and the challenges from the past year. We have some powerful and exciting videos to show you and the opportunity to meet some of the crew and team at EAAA. We also plan to have a live Q&A section later on in the proceedings. So if you wish to ask a question, you can do so through the Slido platform or, for those watching online, on the chat box. Don't worry, if we can't get to your questions, we will follow up with an email at some point. And of course, for those of you who wish to watch me again and again and again, the event will be recorded. And in one last final minute news flash, this event has been shortlisted for the best non-fundraising event in the Charity Virtual Event Awards. Bit of a mouthful and no pressure for me, hey? Finally, thank you all so much for joining us again this year. Our first speaker this evening is none other than EAAA's very own Chief Executive Officer, Matthew Jones. He's been in post for exactly 483 days. Matthew has been a superb CEO, seamlessly navigating the charity through a myriad of improvements and challenges with grace and humanity. Indeed, he promised me if I said all of these things about him, I'd be given unlimited access to the hot tub and champagne bar in his office. Ladies and gentlemen, a warm welcome for Matthew Jones.
Thank you very much, Liam. I don't think I should respond to that. Good evening, everyone, and a warm welcome from me also to tonight's event, whether you've joined us here in person at Helimed House, at one of our watch parties across the region, or virtually via our online platform. We are indeed very delighted to have you with us. And it has been my privilege and my great honour to be the Chief Executive of this great life-saving charity for over a year now. I didn't realise what the exact day count was, but thank you for that, Liam. And goodness, what a year it has been. We've certainly faced another challenging 12 months. I remain immensely proud of and grateful to all our volunteers, our supporters, our crew and our staff who have not only risen to those challenges but have also individually and collectively excelled and continued to push the boundaries in out-of-hospital critical care in East Anglia. It's always fantastic to have some external validation of how we are doing as an organisation. Following a recent inspection, we are very proud that our activities at Helimed House, our new headquarters and Norwich operational base, were rated outstanding by the Care Quality Commission, or CQC, not only overall, but also in every single area of their inspection. This is the first time that we've been given a rating by the CQC, and we're also the first independent healthcare provider in the east of England to be recognised as outstanding across all domains of inspection. Those domains are safe, caring, responsive, effective and well led. This was the culmination of many years of work by many, many people and a reflection of the focus that we always put on our patients. So it is something that everyone, our staff, our crew, our volunteers should be very proud of, but particularly you, our supporters, as it is you who have ultimately made it possible. And for the first time over a full year, we've been able to deliver our critical care services by air and road for 24 hours a day. Consequently, we've treated the highest ever number of patients in a year, more than 1,800 people in need of urgent life-saving care. We'll talk a little bit more about this later in the agenda this evening and the developments that we have introduced during the year. Not surprisingly, this 24/7 flying and the innovation that we pride ourselves in comes at increased operational cost. Inevitably, rising inflation has also had an impact on our average mission cost, and this has risen to £3,750. And over this current year, we need to raise over £17 million to deliver and indeed to develop our service. Our team continue to find increasingly efficient ways of working, but like all organisations, we are facing significant challenges in the year ahead, and we're working hard to plug a projected £1 million shortfall in our funding in 22-23 financial year. These financial challenges, which we hope will be short-term, must not be allowed to affect the service that we provide to our patients and indeed their families, nor what we are trying to achieve in the longer term. And on that note, we've undertaken a strategic review during the year to define what our long-term aims and our new strategy should be. And this strategy was approved by our trustees in June. It's summarised on the slide, but I realise that the words for those people with us in person are probably quite difficult to see. So let me talk a little bit about that. Providing leading-edge critical care for 24 hours a day in order to give everyone the best possible chance of surviving and recovering from a life-threatening emergency is, of course, our key objective. But the strategy explicitly recognises that there are really many components to successfully deliver this. And those things are including raising awareness of life-saving skills in the community. And again, there's a section in the agenda tonight that will focus on that. Undertaking research to provide evidence for the improvements that we want to introduce in our care. Increasing the capacity of our aftercare team so that they can care for patients and their families as they recover from their incident. Collaborating closely with our partners, recognising that we cannot do everything that we want to do alone. We have to work in consort with everybody else. And striving for excellence in everything we do. Yes, on our clinical side, but also on our non-clinical activities. So working together, we will overcome the challenges that face us over the next year and beyond, and we will deliver our objectives and ensure that every patient we treat has the very best possible chance of surviving and recovering from a life-threatening emergency. A heartfelt thank you to all of you for being here tonight, for joining us, and for playing your vital part in our life-saving mission. Thank you.
I am excited for that hot tub. None of what our crews do and the care we provide would be possible without the funding to deliver it. As you all know, we're a charity. We receive no regular government funding. Our supporters, our volunteers, our fundraisers, and the dedicated teams that work tirelessly day in, day out to raise vital funds that we need to develop and deliver our operation. I said this last year, and I'd like to say it again and emphasise it, because their hard work really does mean a great deal to us. Without you, we simply wouldn't exist. And there's a reason we don't all fly around in helicopters. They're not really that cheap. But without ours, we've kind of lost our unique selling point. Stuart Weil is, and I've had to write this on a separate bit of paper, our Director of Engagement and Income, and working closely alongside him is his Finance Director, Rachel Spencer. They deal with all the money things, and they're going to give us a lowdown on our credit card bill of 2022.
Brilliant. Thank you, Liam. Big welcome and thank you for joining us this evening. As Liam said, I'm Stuart Wild, Director of Engagement and Income, but what does that mean? It brings together fundraising, marketing communications and community training teams, and I will be giving you an insight into some of the highlights from last year. And this year I'm pleased to be joined by the ant to my deck, Rachel Spencer, EAAA's Finance Director, who has got the best section of all, talking you through the all-important numbers. So in this part of the evening, we'll have a brief look back at the financial year July 2021 to June 2022. Remember that, it's important. And giving you some insight into our future plans for both engagement and income and our financial position. So, what happened across fundraising last year? Safe to say, once again, we were blown away with the levels of generosity and support from across the region and beyond. Our weekly lottery continued to grow last year, bringing a total number of lines being played per week to a record-breaking 126,000. We saw growth in the numbers of new donors, over 3,700 who donate by direct debit monthly, also known as regular givers. Our winter and spring raffles took place in the financial year, with the amount raised from both raffles and the additional donations totalling over £374,000. We launched 2 direct marketing appeals, including our Christmas Gift of Life campaign, which had the option of donors to write a festive message to our crews, which I'm sure many of you took part in. Gifts in Wills continue to fund nearly 1 in 4 of our missions, and last year income from this special form of giving also grew significantly, and you'll hear more from Rachel in a moment. Income from charitable trusts and foundations also continue to perform strongly, with significant donations to support key areas of our work, including £100,000 from Barclays Community Fund towards the Community CPR training programme, and also £200,000 from the J. Davey Foundation. The community team saw a significant number of events organised in aid of EAAA. This, coupled with the return of our own EAAA events and continued growth in virtual events through the Together We series, which some of you may have taken part in, meant we hit another record for income from event-based fundraising. Our wonderful team of volunteers were also able to get out and about and organise collections and empty collection boxes across the region. In total, we held over 139 bucket collections and over 825 collection boxes were emptied, counted and banked last year. Not a mean feat with all those money in there, raising nearly over £60,000. Other areas of fundraising that contributed to our income this year were clothing banks, in-memory giving, merchandise sales, particularly Christmas cards last year, fundraising from our Charity of the Year partners, businesses, membership organisations, clubs and societies also helped to keep our life-saving service going. It's also worth mentioning that in January 2022, we saw a new team in the charity join the Engagement and Income Department, the community training programme. Building on the success of previous community CPR and AED training activity, we've now secured further funding and aim to train even more people in this life-saving skill. But you'll hear much more about this later on from Paige. So, without further ado, it's over to Rachel Spencer for the numbers and the detail.
Thank you, Stuart. As you can tell from all of the amazing activities Stuart's just been describing, it's been quite a year. The big question is, has all of this hard work and extra effort translated into an increase in income? So, let's get on to the numbers. Lottery, 6.3 million. Community fundraising, 4.2. Gifts in wills, 5.6 million. Our grants and trusts coming in higher at £324,000 from last year. Raffle merchandise income coming in strongly. And also, significantly, our other income, which comes from investments, training, and most importantly, the donated goods and services that we're fortunate enough to benefit from. So, grand total, £18.1 million. Amazing. And just for extra context to that, that's nearly £4 million more than we raised last year. So there are many, many highlights amongst that, not least a huge jump in community fundraising. It's £1.5 million up compared to the previous year. That's a massive increase of 55%. And I think it really illustrates how much the pandemic affected us in previous years and how great it is that we've been able to get back out there and carry on doing what we do. It's humbling to see the difference that it makes. Another showstopper for me this year has been gifts left to us in people's wills. This is a staggering £2 million more than in previous years. And those of you who've followed EAAA for a while will know that in past years we've set aside some of those funds from people's wills to enable us to build Helimed House, which is the cornerstone of our 24/7 by air operations. It seems fitting to put aside some of the gifts we've been fortunate to receive this year in a similar vein. We know we're going to need them in the future, and they truly do create a lasting legacy. Moving on to expenditure, this was lower than planned, reflecting some genuine savings and cost control. Now, you'll hear more about our activities as we go through this evening, but there's a few examples I just thought I'd share to really bring these numbers to life. Without going through every one of them, a couple of things just to highlight. Our rapid response vehicles are always driven virtually under blue light conditions. This means we have to replace the brakes 3 or 4 times a year. And landing fees, another thing to pick out there. At Norwich Airport alone, over £83,000 last year, and we are extremely fortunate and grateful that Norwich Airport actually donates that to us. Now, funding this expenditure requires a professional approach, as Stuart's been talking about. It's vital we have a broad mix of different income types so we haven't got all our eggs in one basket. This too comes at a cost, and this year it was £4 million. But if you think about the lottery, that's £1.6 million worth of that cost, and the lottery generates over £6 million for us. So although it's a big cost, it's still a great return. So coming on to the financial results, we have a surplus that was similar to last year actually, but for very different reasons. As you can see from the table, last year we had a large increase in the value of our investments, £1.5 million. Now, as we're all too well aware, the current economic situation is affecting everyone in different ways, and although our investments are diversified to protect them as much as possible, they still fell during the year, and they continue to fall. Which leads me to the main point from my perspective, and Matthew touched on it in his introduction, which is about sustainability for the future. With inflationary pressure affecting costs and the squeeze on disposable household income, we anticipate we'll be hit with a double whammy: rising costs, reduced income. And we're seeing the signs of this already. Consequently, we anticipate, as Matthew said, we'll have a deficit next year and potentially the year after as well. Now, as a responsible charity, we hold savings in the bank to make sure we can weather such difficult financial situations. And I think if ever there was a case for that, you only have to look at the last 2 years and probably what's coming in the next few years as well. So for me, it's about making sure that we closely monitor how the charity is being affected, we're responding to it, we're reviewing our forecasts, we're looking at our long-term projections, so we essentially make sure that we have the financial resilience to carry on our life-saving services, not just now, but in the future. And on that note, I'll hand back to Stuart.
Brilliant, thank you, Rachel. The cost of living crisis will impact everyone, but to what extent it will impact the levels of support we receive is not fully known. But being the organisation we are, we won't be standing still. Across fundraising, marketing communications and community training, we are currently developing a new 5-year strategy in line with EAAA's new organisation-wide strategy, which Matthew mentioned a minute ago. As a team, we will promise to continue to work in partnership with our supporters to deliver the income needed to achieve EAAA's mission. Over the next 5 years, we will continue to invest in and focus on our team and ensure that they have the resources, skills and technology needed to do their roles now and in the future. Growing engagement and awareness across the region about our vital service to ensure everyone knows what we do, why it's important, and to grow the number of people supporting the charity. Raise the money needed by being great at the fundraising we already do, but to test and develop new ways of fundraising. Ensure that all our supporters have the very best experience being part of fundraising, so they continue to support the charity for many, many years to come. So now, the final and most important bit from both Rachel and I. We want to take this opportunity to say a huge thank you to both our teams and all of our supporters. It's been an incredibly busy year, and you've all risen to the challenge, and we're forever grateful. So, back to you, Liam.
I'd like to point out that it's not my driving that's responsible for replacement brakes every 3 months. Now, we were planning to head over to my main base, Cambridge, the home of Anglia 2. Some say that Anglia 2 is derived from the idea that it's twice as good as Anglia 1. However, in order to keep our pilots in slick condition for night flying, they're currently landing in a dark field somewhere. So unfortunately, you're stuck with me to read out some thank yous. Now, bear with me because I've not read these yet. So first of all, I'd like to shout out to Stevie, his brother Thomas and mum Jill. Stevie is the most passionate young EAAA fan and literally knows this charity inside and out. He recently had a base visit and kept the crew on their toes with his knowledge of our recent missions. Keep up the great work, Steve, and good luck with your fundraising. Margaret Morris and Julie Williams, a big thank you to you both for dealing with one of our more unique gifts left in a will. They've helped us to value and sort a large number of collectible coins which were kindly left to EAAA by a supporter, and we appreciate that wasn't a small undertaking. A huge thank you to Lisa Jones for supporting our work by delivering talks to local groups. To date, Lisa has given over 225 presentations on a range of subjects to raise vital funds for the work we do. To our fantastic team of volunteers, following a busy summer with 3 Trek events, Only the Brave, and a whole host of other events too, but they've been there every time, making sure that we could host these amazing fundraising opportunities and giving hundreds of hours of their time. We really couldn't do it without you. To Wendy and Jack Jinkerson, good luck with the Air Ambulance UK Awards for all your great fundraising. And David Offord and family for raising money, and your friend for making and selling the wonderful Platinum Jubilee bunting, some of which we have here at the base. Thank you to everyone who supported us. Every year at East Anglian Air Ambulance, we respond to around 500 cardiac arrests. That's around 25% of all the missions we are tasked to. Immediate CPR, early defibrillation are fundamental to survival from cardiac arrest. Not surprisingly, as a CCP, I've seen firsthand how imperative and life-saving these interventions can be. Now, for those joining again from last year, you may remember Dr. Trish Mills, who I attended after a serious road traffic collision. Well, I'd just like to point out at this stage that I have no say in which patients are invited back to tell their story. However, I will be introducing one of my patients again, so don't believe what people say about my clinical skills. Joining him as well will be someone who appears to be gunning for my job after her appearance on BBC Breakfast yesterday. Either that or she's up for the new Scarlet Moffat. Ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to welcome former cardiac arrest survivor Dave Cleland and BBC presenter and CCP Paige Chamberlain to share Dave's story.
Good evening, everyone, here and online. So many of you won't know, but there's actually over 30,000 people suffer an out-of-hospital sudden cardiac arrest each year. Of those, only 8% survive. So bringing that a bit closer to home, that's 3,200 or thereabouts in East Anglia, and only 250 and a few survive. If you do early CPR, or get early CPR, and you get early defibrillation, your chance of survival increases by about 10%. So why am I here? I mean, Liam's told you why I'm here. I had an event last year, but I actually had a heart attack in February last year, which is a plumbing issue with the heart. Came home 7 days later and had a cardiac arrest, which is an electrical problem. So they are completely different things. I'm one of the lucky 8%, and I'm here for a chain of survival started by my wife, who gave me CPR. I then had the land ambulance, who shocked my heart. Liam then came along in his nice car and sedated me for some reason. I think I got a bit aggressive. Then the air ambulance arrived. They ventilated me, so they stopped me breathing and ventilated me and securely transferred me to the Royal Papworth Hospital. And a week later, I was home. So on to Paige. Apart from being a TV star these days, you're also an EAAA CCP and the new community CPR manager. So what got you to become a paramedic, and what brought you to the air ambulance?
Well, as a sprightly 18-year-old just finishing my A-levels, I knew that I wanted to go and do something medical, but I also knew that I didn't want to be hemmed in by the same four walls with a predictive work pattern. So being a paramedic seemed like the obvious choice. I was a paramedic on the road ambulances for about 6 years, and then I've been here for the last 4.5 as a CCP.
Absolutely fantastic. And Liam said about a quarter of the missions that the air ambulance attend are sudden cardiac arrests, and that's over 400, nearly 500 a year. From your experience, what difference does early intervention make?
Well, you're obviously a very good advert for that. So I'll always remember a clinical shift that I did not too long ago, where we went to 2 patients almost identical in nature, and one of them received bystander CPR, got transferred to the hospital and has since been discharged. The other patient unfortunately didn't receive bystander CPR, and sadly it wasn't a good outcome. And there's a chain of survival which was already spoken about, so early recognition of the event, being able to physically recognise what's going on, starting bystander CPR and using a community defibrillator before having access to the advanced life support, which is what we can provide. If those 3 things haven't been done before we get there, the difference that we can make is massively limited. So it's really important that if you're able to and you know how to start the bystander CPR.
And as a sort of survivor myself, one of the things you want is if you had a cardiac arrest, first of all, you want somebody to witness it, because otherwise you've got no chance, and then you want that person to actually step in.
That's right.
So what causes people not to step in?
I think it's a general lack of knowledge and confidence. Obviously, it's not something we see every day. We don't see people collapsing in cardiac arrest all the time. So when it does happen, it's quite unusual for you to have to do something about it. So I do think it's a general lack of confidence and knowledge. And also, people are worried about doing something wrong, and therefore they do nothing at all. And actually, that's the worst thing you can do. Doing nothing at all is the worst thing you can do. Doing something is always better than nothing, even if that's calling 999, because they will help you through the process. And interesting, women are actually considerably less likely to have bystander CPR than men. So that's worth bearing in mind.
And as I've said, in the UK, the survival rate is 8%, but Norway, it's 25%. So
Yeah.
What's your vision for getting us to the Norway level?
Yeah, well, we're always monitoring our cardiac arrest data, and that is something that I like to keep an eye on. Actually, our bystander CPR rate's increasing, and our defibrillator use as well. They've slowly been creeping up. In East Anglia, it's better than the national average, so that's good. But the community CPR team are hoping to target up to 20,000 people every year, by targeting schools, businesses, community groups and sports centres and things like that.
Fantastic. So for those people in the audience, both virtually and in the room, what do they do if they're inspired to learn CPR? How should they move forward?
So if you are part of a business or a community group or sports group or anything like that, and you feel like you will benefit from a 1-hour CPR session, please do get in touch. We'd be delighted to come and deliver a session for you. Otherwise, anyone that's keen to come in and volunteer on our programme to help deliver this training, we'd be very glad to have you, and just general awareness raising and fundraising.
Thank you, Paige, and thanks for everybody who has learnt CPR. I definitely have since my event. CPR is the one thing that really makes the difference. It's been shown to make the difference. Let's get to the Norway 25%, and not only does it improve survival rates, if you get there early, it improves the outcome, how good you are if you survive.
Yes.
Thank you very much for listening.
Thank you.
Thank you to Dave for sharing his experience there. It really is incredible and very humbling to see you doing so well. Please, if you do one thing tonight, go and learn CPR. Now it's time for the budding aviators out there to get excited. Coming up next, Seb Powderham, a pilot here with us at EAAA, one of the keenest beans in the box, is going to give you a quick tour of the upgraded H145 helicopter, now featuring a whole extra blade. Unfortunately, Seb couldn't be here in person to show you around the helicopter, as he is attending the awards ceremony for East Anglia's top 10 best-looking HEMS pilots. But thankfully, he's recorded a nice message instead.
Hello everyone, my name's Seb Powderham. I'm one of the co-pilots with the East Anglian Air Ambulance at Helimed House, so that's our Norwich facility. We run 2 H145 helicopters, one in Norwich, which is just outside, which I'm going to show you in a minute, and one down at Cambridge. Without further ado, what we're going to do is we're going to simulate a tasking. So we're going to imagine what happens if the phone goes off and what some of the considerations are before we walk out of the office. So if we come over to the phone, the first thing we need to do is we need to pick it up and we need to assess whether it's going to be a road job, so that's one where the medics go out in the rapid response vehicle, or it's going to be a flying job. So if we pick up the phone and they start to read out a OS grid reference to us, we know it's a flying job. The pilot who's going to be flying the aircraft will start walking out and they'll start getting it started. The other pilot will grab the iPad, they'll go onto our mapping software, we'll type the OS grid reference in, and we'll be able to assess a little bit of detail in what the routing is that we're going to be taking, and also a little bit about the landing site that we're going to be landing in. What we'll do now is we'll take this iPad out to the aircraft, which is this way. Take this off.
Keep watching, Seb.
So here we are, we're airside at Norwich. At this moment, the pilot who has walked out to the aircraft to get it started will have it up and running, and the medics will be following close behind to get into the aircraft so that we can start our pre-takeoff check so that we can get going. But now I'll give you a short tour of the H145 just to show you a few features that we've got on board and describe what exactly they do to help us on our missions. So a number of different things. If we come over here, you can see the iPad bracket that we've got up here. That's where we'll place our iPad that has the routing on it so that we know exactly where we're going and can expeditiously get to the patient's side. And also that will help us when it comes to recceing landing sites because we've got satellite imagery on there as well. As you know, at both bases, Cambridge and Norwich, we can operate throughout the hours of darkness. Here at Norwich, we're H24, so doing a 12-hour night shift all the way through. And we've got this high-intensity searchlight on the front left skid, which will help us do that. In combination with the night vision goggles, which we've got on our helmet, we can flip those down and intensify the light that this high-intensity searchlight is producing to enable us to land in pitch black, unrecceed, unlit night landing sites across our region at any time of day or night. If we come around this side, I can show you in the back of the cabin. So in the back of the cabin, we can have it in a number of different configurations with regards to the crew. So today on shift, we've got 2 doctors and a paramedic. That means that one of the doctors will sit in this chair here, another one will sit here, and the paramedic will sit over in that seat there. In the back of the aircraft, we've got everything that you'd find in a conventional emergency department in a hospital. I'm not going to go into any more detail than that. One of the main differences with this H145 helicopter is that it's a D3. Now what that means is it's got a 5th rotor blade on the top. So what does that help us with? Well, having the 5th blade, they've got much more advanced aerofoils, so we get a much more power from the rotor head, enabling us to take more load. So that's really beneficial when it comes to fuel. We can carry about 20 minutes more fuel. So what does that mean? Well, at night time, because there's a lot less airports available to us, what that means is we'll be able to fly to more patients, do longer distances, etc. Also, the downtime of the aircraft is minimized because the rotor head requires a lot less maintenance, and it massively minimizes vibration, whether we're flying in smooth conditions or in turbulent air. If we come around to the back of the aircraft, I can show you inside the clamshell doors. Named for obvious reasons. There we go. So in the back here, we've got this big black bag. Inside, we've got loads more medical equipment. We've got a mechanical CPR machine, which we call the Lucas. We've got a splints bag. We've got chest trauma kits in the back here as well, along with blood and lyoplas, should the patient need any of those things. Also, this is where, if we're going to fly a patient by air, the way that we load them in and out of the aircraft. So this trolley mechanism, which is the Aerolite stretcher fit, we can slide out to put the patient on, and then we can slide it straight back in nice and easily. You'll also see on this aircraft that it's a skidded configuration for the landing gear. That helps us with lots of the landings that we do within our region, lots of which can be on beaches in quite marshy or damp conditions. So having the skids basically means that the aircraft won't settle too far into the ground, which makes it really nice and useful for us. So that pretty much concludes this short virtual tour. I hope you've enjoyed it. Once again, thank you very much for joining me and for all of your charitable donations. Every single mission, every time the red phone goes, costs us on average £3,750. So thank you very much for all of the charitable donations, and we'll see you again soon.
Thank you there to Seb, and fingers crossed on his award tonight. After saying that, I'm a little bit concerned he might also be after my job. Our next speaker is a man really dedicated to his role, and he's going to share with you everything you need to know about innovation and improvements over the last 12 months. In fact, he's so dedicated to his role overseeing innovation and improvement that he spent a great deal of time innovating and improving his job title from Head of Operations to Director of Operations and Infrastructure. When Richard heard I was presenting again this year, his response was, "Why him again? Last year he was a nightmare." So with that, please welcome fellow Northerner, Richard Heinsohn. There you go.
Thanks for that lovely introduction, Liam, and thanks for allowing me the opportunity to speak to you all here, and those of you who are dialed in remotely as well. So, my name is Richard. I am now the Director of Operations and Infrastructure, which is an additional challenge for me, and another example of how this organisation really invests in people and gives them the opportunity to grow and develop whatever they do for a role. What we have here is an infographic, essentially, and it's very easy. There's numbers here and lots of figures and all the rest of it, but for each one of these numbers we're talking about a real person, and sometimes maybe when we're looking at the numbers we lose sight of that. One of the numbers that was mentioned earlier was the 1,800 patients a year. That's 1,800 people who've been affected by the service we deliver. But again, it's much more than that, isn't it? Because it's their friends, their families, their relatives, everyone they know has touched by these sorts of events. And some of you will be able to relate that directly or indirectly as well. So whenever we talk about the numbers, they are more than numbers, they are people that we're talking about. So Seb very kindly briefly talked about the D3 upgrade. So this is the Norwich aircraft at Babcock HQ. Just about getting ready to start the works for its D3 upgrade, essentially getting the 5th blade. Now, it might surprise you that this is far more complicated than merely it looks of just adding an additional blade. So we can see what the aircraft was like, how much they had to take out, how much they had to actually change in order to put an extra blade on the top of the aircraft. Now, the original plan was this would be 2 hours of engineers' time to deliver this project. The actual was 900 hours. Now, when they do these kinds of works, this isn't a routine thing. This is a pioneering thing that EAAA and Babcock, our aircraft provider, have invested in here. It's the first D2 to D3 upgrade in the UK that was done with this aircraft. So it's really, again, another example of how we look at every opportunity to try and improve the operation. So here we go, in February, there is Res-U, Anglia 1, the Norwich aircraft, all done. It was completed in February 2022. Interestingly, I had a look recently and we've done over 600 missions in the D3 since it was upgraded. So it's been thoroughly tested. Some of the reasons why we've done it then, so the reduced the vibration, so yes, it's more comfortable, there's less fatigue, especially when we're talking about, flying 24/7, night shifts, getting that job at 3-4 o'clock in the morning. But it also allows the steady hand for when some critical interventions are required on the patient in flight. Ideally, the crew stabilise and do those critical interventions before flight, but sometimes they need to be done in flight, and again, that additional stability really, really helps. In terms of the capacity, so it actually, although we've added an extra blade, we've actually reduced the weight of the aircraft by 50 kilos. It's also been recertified to carry an additional 100 kilos. So that gives us a net increase of 150 kilos. And we're talking about aircraft, we're talking about aviation. Every gram is accounted for. Every gram we can shred adds additional capability to the aircraft. So 150 kilos is a huge benefit to the aircraft and its operation. So fuel, especially at night, reduced areas to get fuel. It's essential that we can go from job to job to job and not have to go offline to then go and refuel. In the past, with smaller aircraft that had less capability, that was a reoccurring theme. Now, it's not a problem. We can also carry additional people and additional equipment. We know the world of technology is moving fast, and pre-hospital care is no different. And new technologies, new ways in which we can help patients even further are coming on the market all the time. So with that extra capacity, we're able to deliver those interventions and not worry about whether the aircraft has the capability to do so. So our Norwich aircraft has been done. Our Cambridge aircraft is scheduled to be complete, or start and be completed within Q1 2023. Now, it won't be the exact same. Because of these aircraft, what works for one in terms of the retrofit, the other one is always slightly different. So it's not like a car where they're mass produced. There is differences between them. So it'll bring unique challenges again for the engineering team in Babcock. What we also invested in was a second helipad at our Norwich base. So what you have here is the plans. And it may appear fairly simple to deliver a helipad. You're pouring some concrete. But actually what we had to do was maintain the operation so we could get the aircraft in and out the hangar, divert the taxiway behind so that the onshore aircraft could still operate, keep the workers safe, and create a new airside-landside border. So very complicated process in order to plan and deliver this project. The helipad will hopefully become fully operational next week when we have the final HAZOP meeting with the airport. It will be signed off and we should be operating from there before the end of the next week. That's news to Liam as well, he didn't know that. So hot off the press. So why have we done it then? Why have we invested in a helipad then? A second helipad, I should say. So often when on occasions we need to switch out our aircraft, so another one goes in and our aircraft goes away for its routine maintenance. Currently when that happens, we have to go offline, drag the aircraft in, bring the new one in, drag that one in, drag the other one out. So we're essentially moving aircraft in and out the hangar every time we need to do an aircraft swap. Now that we have two helipads, we'll be able to land them both, quickly swap over the kit and have 15-20 minutes downtime and then be straight back online. The other flexibility it gives us is it allows the Cambridge aircraft to come in and land and refuel if it happens to be closer to this area. So the investment will last us for the next 50 years and essentially give us much more operational flexibility and capability for a long period of time. So 24/7 HEMS then. So we've just completed our first year of 24/7 HEMS. We recently did quite a comprehensive review on this and looked at all the numbers, all the stats, all the information we could. It was quite a challenge to cherry pick which bits to deliver here because I couldn't talk about all of it. But what we have with the graphic you see on the screens is on the right-hand side, as you see the distribution of Norwich night HEMS jobs, night aircraft jobs across the region. And on the left-hand side, you see it by day. Now, what you will notice is on the right-hand side, the spread of the jobs is much wider than it is during the day, which is exactly why we have an aircraft 24/7, so it can cover a large area, even in the middle of the night. We did a total of 250 night helicopter missions in year one, which is a phenomenal amount of missions. Now, the launch times, very important. So average during the day, we look to 3 to 4 minutes to launch, so that's from when the phone rings to the aircraft lifts. We achieved an average of 7.3 minutes during the night. So that additional planning element that the pilots need to do and the crew need to do made a very small difference. The caseload as well, so it may not surprise you, there was a different type of patient that we were attending at night. Much more trauma, blood, assaults, RTCs, proportionally much higher during the night than they were during the day. So what else have we done then? So supply chains. COVID was an issue, Brexit was an issue, then COVID, now we have worldwide supply chain issues. So we're challenging to try and make sure we get all the equipment that we need in order to deliver our service and make sure Liam and his colleagues can do their business. Rising costs, you've heard from income, you've heard from our finance director about the challenges on income, but rising costs, we are seeing that, our suppliers are saying, almost apologising, saying we have to raise our costs. Storm Eunice, if you remember that far back, caused significant damage to our Cambridge hangar. Cyber security, slightly dull and boring, but with the war in Ukraine now, they're seeing more and more activity that we believe is from Russia, nationally as a country trying to attack our systems. Our data is essential to our service, so we are in a constant battle and fight to improve our cyber security. Blood on Board. It was a big achievement last year when I announced that we were starting Blood on Board. I can confirm in the first year of carrying blood, we've delivered blood to 76 patients across the region. That's 76 patients that we've delivered critical intervention for. That's more than this entire room. One other thing I forgot to mention, is Adam Brooks helipad. So we worked hand in hand with Adam Brooks to deliver a brand new helipad that will be there for the next 3 to 4 years. Last but not least, we've placed an order for 2 new RRVs following a successful fundraising campaign. So thank you to all those who were involved in that. The order's been placed. It should arrive in January 2023 and fully operational a few weeks after that. Thank you all for your time. I know there was a lot and I was pushed for time. I was being told to hurry up. But it just shows the kind of stuff that we're doing, and there's a lot more to come in the next year. It's looking very exciting. From me and from my team, thank you all for your fantastic support. Cheers.
Dave's story earlier demonstrated the reason that we exist and the benefit our teams bring to patients across East Anglia. The video we're about to share is testament to the level of care we can provide just about anywhere, and is a great example of the integration and teamwork we undertake on a daily basis with our fellow emergency service colleagues. Now, just a slight caution, this video does contain footage from the scene that day of Mark's incidents, but I don't think there's any blood. We'd like to thank Mark and his family for allowing us to share his story this evening.
The first thing I remember about that morning was being awoken by the paramedics from the ambulance service and being put onto a drip.
Mark's type 1 diabetic, so he'd been having some problems with his blood sugars for a few weeks.
We all decided to drive to the beach.
And then all of a sudden he just started having a seizure, which is terrifying.
Hello Norwich, 4 times seizures, now unconscious.
We called, an ambulance was called, and quite quickly they arrived along with the Suffolk Accident Rescue Service.
When we arrived, the history that was given to us by Mark's wife was that they arrived at the beach following an episode in the morning where Mark had felt unwell with a low blood sugar level.
They said that they thought the seizures was something actually to do with his brain.
In that circumstance, it's quite challenging to know what the diagnosis is. You worry that he may have had a neurosurgical event, like a bleed in the brain.
It was just terrifying to see somebody have a seizure and not know. And I knew, especially when I knew it wasn't to do with the blood sugar at that point.
So yeah, we thought we'd call in our colleagues on the air ambulance so we could all work together to get him into the right place.
I've obviously found out a bit later on is that not necessarily is it the speed of getting to the hospital, it's actually bringing the hospital on site.
Based at Norwich Airport on the day with the incident being on Southwold Beach, the approximate run time by road would have been around about 40 miles, so quite a significant distance. Once we'd got mobile, we were able to be at Mark's side within 18 minutes.
When the air ambulance was coming, I knew it was serious. And I can remember saying to my sister, I didn't want to lose it.
Arriving on scene, we could see from the overhead that the Coast Guards and the lifeguards had done a great job of clearing the beach. Once we'd diagnosed Marcus suffering from a neurological event, our decision making became quite easy. For patients to have the best outcomes from neurological injuries, we have to control their airway, control their breathing and control their circulation. The easiest way to do this in the pre-hospital setting is to give the patients a general anaesthetic and take over their breathing by placing a tube down into their lungs. We spoke to our consultant on call, who agreed that this patient probably would suit going to the local hospital first for a CT scan. We therefore decided to load Mark into the helicopter on the beach before flying him to the James Padgett Hospital.
The first recollection was being in intensive care, where it was quite scary, or it was very, very scary. Not only was I not knowing where I was, the last thing I remembered vaguely was being at the beach, and suddenly I'm in intensive care, wide up at both wrists and being wired directly into my neck, having an intubation tube removed from my lungs. The aftercare support side of things has just been phenomenal.
What really helped was they invited us all to Hellmead House.
Thank you very much.
The thing that really got me was seeing the difference in the children. When they got to sit in the helicopter, they got to put on the helmets, they got to sit in the cockpit with the SARS, they got to sit in the car and push the buttons and turn the sirens on, and to see their reaction to that and see them come away with a smile on their face. Yeah, that really made a big impact on me.
We're absolutely delighted to have Mark and his family with us this evening in person. Thank you very much for coming, and thank you so much for sharing your powerful story. I've had a long, hard think about how I introduce the next guest, as whatever I say may well lead to my P45 arriving on my doorstep tomorrow. Indeed, this man has never presented at our year in review before, and I suspect he's more nervous about what I'm going to say than about his own speech. He's never quite sure what words will come out of my mouth, and whether to shake his head in despair or stifle a giggle. Please welcome the man who keeps us all in line, the Mrs. Trunchbull of EAAA, if you like, Medical Director, Dr. Victor Ingyang.
Good evening, all. Thanks, Liam. I will remember this. No, thank you. It's good to see so many supporters and colleagues in the room, and hello to the people in the virtual world. As Liam said, my name's Victor, I'm Medical Director with EAAA. I've been with the organisation for a long time, since about 2004. And what I wanted to just is give you a bit of a flavour of the background of the people in the background within EAAA and what we do to try and give you the best possible service if, God forbid, you need our help. The clinical team, the clinical leadership team, finally came together about a year ago. So this is what we do within EAAA is a team event. It's very rare that one person is able to do everything. So I have a fantastic team who I work with, in addition to the other teams within the charity. So starting from the top right is actually another critical care paramedic. They do rule EAAA. Andy Downs. Annie is in charge of quality delivery and clinical governance. And essentially what that means is that Andy is one of the people who will make sure that the care we deliver is of the best possible care. And if it isn't the best possible care, we want to work out why. And we have a very open culture about that. Next to Andy, as you work towards me, is Nicola Ebbs. Now, Nicola Ebbs is one of my deputy medical directors. She has an attention to detail that is phenomenal. She pulls all of us up for any mistakes we make. And she's in charge of, again, clinical governance and service delivery. And she is very, very busy. Alison is next to Nicola. Now, Alison is head of safeguarding. Now, what that means, and aftercare. So Alison does a lot of the patient contact and what happens after you've had an injury or an illness. She's the point of contact, and she has a team that works with her. And again, they're very busy as well, providing support to many patients and relatives. And I think people tend to appreciate this. But Alison also provides support for safeguarding, which is really, really important. So if you can imagine, in the job we do, we're quite privileged to go into many homes and many hospitals and many establishments. And from time to time, rarely, we see situations that are concerning. So it may be an adult patient who isn't being well looked after at home by carers, or children who perhaps there's some concerns about injuries. We then have a responsibility as practitioners to raise that with social services. It's a legal obligation. So Alison coordinates all that. I'll skip my picture. You know a bit about me. So Rob is next to me, and Rob leads the research and innovation group. And they are this hive of activity. I call them my super geeks. And they just produce a lot of research and evidence-based to back a lot of what we do. So very, very busy what happens within the research group. He's done a lot of work with the University of East Anglia, and so we're working very closely with them as regards being more collaborative and more academic as regards what we do. Next to him is Neil Flowers. Neil is another critical care paramedic, and what I was very keen to have within my leadership group was to have a nice balance of doctors and critical care paramedics, because without them, we can't do the job we do, and without us, they can't do the job we do. We have this very close symbiotic relationship that has to work on scene under high pressure. The aftercare service, like I said, they're seeing more and more patients. A slight blip in September. Not quite sure if that's an accounting error, but as time's gone by, the number of patients they see having had an injury or an illness is gradually increasing. We had a very interesting problem during COVID, whereby because of the lockdown and because of access and restrictions to the base, we had some difficulties with that. And so we got around that using virtual chat, which I think went down really well with patients. I shan't say anything about this, I'll let you read that. That is why I come to work every day. That's what we're all about. That's what we're trying to achieve. And if we can achieve that consistently, then I'm doing my job really well, and Matthew will be happy with me, I think. And just as we get to the end of the talk, I just want to give you a little overview of the beehive of activity within the research group. They have been really busy. They have produced 2 published papers, which is quite a difficult undertaking, very rigorous. You have to go through to produce research papers. And just about a month ago, our team, I'm going to say this because I have a vested interest, we dominated a scientific meeting in Belfast where we presented 5 papers and had 3 oral presentations. But what does this mean exactly? Well, one paper was looking at the outcome of people who've had major trauma taken to Cambridge. And if you were treated by the EAAA, your outcome was significantly better. And we have the evidence for that. The second paper is in we call this the green whistle. Now this is a drug called Penthrox. And you inhale the drug through the green tube, and it's a very powerful painkiller. And it's just about as good as morphine. So we can treat a lot of people with fractures by the roadside, splint the fractures, and then allow the ambulance crew safely carry them to hospital, freeing us up to go to other jobs. If we had given you morphine or ketamine, which is another drug we give, you're normally so flat, we then have to go with you, which takes us out of action. So using that actually increases our availability to go to other jobs within that same locality and in the region. Bang on time. At this point, I've just paused for breath, and I'd just like to say thank you. Thank you for the support you give us. Thank you for the retweets that happen. Thank you for the social media presence. We can't do what we do without the help we get from you. And on behalf of the clinical team and EAAA, I'd just like to end by saying thank you very much.
Thank you, Victor. Please don't sack me. Our Director of People and Culture, Sarah Atkins, helps to shape the charity's culture for staff and volunteers. Now, she couldn't join us in person either this evening, and see if you can work out why in a special video she's recorded for us with a slight EAAA twist. Joining Sarah tonight is Dr. Brendan Fletcher. And for those of you who don't know Dr. Brendan, he's an avid tractor fan. In fact, his love of tractors is so great that he recently took a position as honorary representative of John Deere. If you wish to speak to more about that with him, please do. Roll VT.
Good evening and welcome to EAAA Mastermind with me, Brendan Fletcher. Can we have our first contestant join us in the chair? And your name is?
Sarah Atkins.
Your occupation?
Director of People and Culture.
And your specialist subject?
All things people and culture at EAAA in the last 12 months.
Ah yes, People and Culture, a department within the charity focused on the strategic management of staff and volunteers, the charity's culture and working environment in 2 minutes starting now. Why are you not able to join us at the Year in Review to present in person this evening?
I'm at a conference.
How many staff does the EAAA currently employ?
101.
How many hours have volunteers donated in the last 3 months alone?
1,500.
What has been the most fun you've had at work in the last 12 months?
It was when Dr. Pam Crispin retired and we put on a treasure hunt for her to meet patients that she'd treated and special places she'd been around the region. We followed her for the whole day and it was featured heavily in the press, and it was just a wonderful way to say goodbye to a very special colleague.
What happened on the 14th of May 2022 this year?
The UK placed second at the Eurovision Song Contest.
Incorrect. I was looking for East Anglian Air Ambulance's Volunteer Celebration Day. What is the Volunteer Celebration Day?
It is when we gather all our volunteers together to say thank you for the work that they've done, meet the crew, get some updates, look around the base, have some lovely lunch.
At the Volunteer Celebration Day, whose name did volunteers chant when they wanted them to join in their group photo?
Brendan.
When somebody volunteers for EAAA, we record how many hours of their time they've donated and attach a value to that time. Based on the activity that they've done, how many missions per year do volunteers hope to fund through their donated hours?
15.
Which is your favourite, Anglia 1 or Anglia 2?
Pass.
How were the flowers for the postponed gala dinner on the 9th of September used?
We took them to Sandringham and laid them at the gates in tribute to Her Majesty the Queen.
What was the most exciting moment of the last year?
It was when we still had everyone working remotely at home who could work at home because COVID was rampant, and suddenly we had the arrival of G-Resu back with its 5th blade, so we organised an online streaming party for staff and volunteers to watch its arrival while listening to pop music from the boy band 5.
Creating a positive and inclusive culture is a big part of your role. Was there anything this year that could have jeopardised that?
Yes, it was the tug of war which took place between the Norwich and Cambridge teams at the summer staff day.
Who won?
I believe it was a draw.
Incorrect. The answer was apparently Cambridge. What wellbeing initiative has caused the most excitement this year?
Holly, the wellbeing trauma dog, who visits the offices for some pause time with our ground staff and crew.
The family of Dr. Carl McQueen, who died by suicide, donated how many flight helmets to EAAA in his memory?
9.
What do these helmets signify?
So they protect heads and aid communication, and they extend Carl McQueen's legacy, not only through the work of the McQueen Charter that looks to support health and wellbeing for staff in this sector, but also just to encourage curiosity, remember all the great work he did, and be a symbol of continuous learning.
What has been the biggest change to the workforce in the last 12 months?
The recruitment of the emeritus doctors, which is when we took doctors previously engaged under a locum contract and made them our employees so that we would have a closer and stronger relationship with them and ensure our ongoing support of clinical cover.
What is the biggest piece of personal development you've undertaken?
Probably attending the transgender awareness training. Quite a few of our staff took part actually, and we learnt loads about what we didn't know we needed to know. And if I was to give advice to anyone, if they're unsure when someone shares their gender identity, what to say, just say, and what does that mean to you? And that person will then respond and educate you more about this really interesting area.
Which of the charity's 5 values most resonates with you?
Integrity.
Based on your previous answer, I've started so I'll finish. Can I invite you again to tell me why you're not at the year in review in person?
I am in Disney World.
So Sarah, you had only the 1 pass and 3 incorrect answers, including your attempt to cover up your whereabouts this evening. So at the end of that round, you have scored 16 points.
Thank you, Brendan.
Join us again for more EAAA Mastermind. Thank you for watching, and goodbye.
Cambridge won the tug of war, and we'll say nothing more on that. Our speakers tonight have all had the opportunity to rehearse their speeches, but in this section we get to see just how well they really know EAAA as we take your questions and put them to the panel. Now, because there's so many of you spread out across the region, we'll probably only have time to take 1 or 2 from each area. So in true Great British Bake Off extra slice style, I believe we have Ruth, Maz and Lucy who'll be acting as EAAA's Tom Allen, frantically running between you with a microphone. So please allow that to arrive before you ask your question. And with that, something is going to happen for me to have questions. Can't all be smooth and perfect. Could take some in the audience. Anyone got a question? Question, anyone? There we go, question. Who's this one for? Yeah, it's all you. Spotlight is on you.
I'd be very interested to know what is the cost to get one of your helicopters off the ground?
If anyone didn't hear that, was what is the cost to get one of the helicopters off the ground? Ricardo?
I'll have a go at that. So obviously the average cost per mission was £3,750. But in terms of when we fly it, so we burn about 320 litres per hour of fuel while the aircraft is flying. So whatever we are charged per litre for fuel, that is one additional cost. We also have an additional cost for a flying charge for the power by the hour of the aircraft itself. So those 2 are the big 2 flying costs that are variable, although 90% of the aircraft costs are actually fixed, if you like. So the more missions we do, per mission, the cheaper it gets, if you like, because most of them are fixed costs. So the 2 variable are the fuel costs and the power per hour, the flying charge. Does that answer your question? Yeah.
Not bad, Richard. Okay, I'm going to take another question from someone online here, under the name of Anonymous. Is funding keeping up with the demand in the current financial climate? Stuart, all yours.
Yeah, I think, as we said before, we did have a really good year last year. We are monitoring how it's going to be performing this year. We are 3 months into our new financial year and things are doing okay. We are seeing some areas of our fundraising start to drop a little bit, perhaps with cancellations for lottery plays, things like that. But we're still managing to top those up at the moment. So there's nothing dramatic, but we are seeing, we will be monitoring how it goes over the next few months and indeed years, however long this cost of living crisis will be with us. But we are in a really good position. So I think hopefully we should weather the storm. Thank you.
Thank you. Your phone's locked. Oh, here we go. Fantastic. There was a question I saw actually, which was a clinical one, which is probably good for Victor. Does EAAA see itself undertaking eCPR over the coming years? Not expert on this.
So EAAA is eCPR is your advanced CPR. This is using more invasive techniques. And this is something we're looking at doing because we think that that's going to be the next big thing as regards improving survival outside cardiac arrest. What it tends to involve, just to explain quite simply, is in addition to doing chest compressions and intubating patients, we can actually go one step further by inserting balloons into the aorta and the artery. And that, we believe, can take your survival rate from something like 9%, and the Americans are promising something in the region of 60-something%. So that could be a real game changer as regards how we move cardiac resuscitation over the next few years.
Superb. That's why you're medical director. Should we take another one in the audience? Quickly? If no one's got one, I've got loads here. Gentleman here.
What sort of percentage
Oh, wait for the microphone.
What percentage of your income is actually spent on the admin side as against the operations?
Good question. Finance people?
Yeah, so I think as I touched on earlier, obviously the fundraising costs that we have equated to £4 million last year. I think for us, there's a lot of governance that you would maybe class as admin, which is actually essential to delivering the clinical services that we do. So although it might be seeming like a back office function, it's actually crucial to things like CQC signing us off as outstanding. So in terms of percentage, if you look at our annual report and accounts, you won't see a figure that's sort of split out because it's actually integral to everything else that we do. If that answers your question.
Perfect. There's a question here actually which maybe I can answer to save the panel, is how can the medical team cope with the trauma of the job given that every call out is likely to involve serious injuries? It's a really good point, and you know, every day we do see injuries and illnesses that are traumatic, and they do affect you. But I'd say that the key thing about the air ambulance is that we are a big family and we are a team, and there is never a better place to come back to debrief and chat about the things you've seen and get the support you need. The support here is fantastic. We've got a number of mechanisms that we can call upon if we need it, whether that be counselling, whether it's just a chat with a friend or a colleague, or referral onwards to somewhere else. But I can't emphasise enough, we really are a family here, and everyone knows what jobs people have been to, and you're never short of a phone call or a text from someone to check in on you to make sure that you've been okay after a job. So I'd say that's probably the best mechanism for us. Paige, you're not escaping lightly. Do you do any CPR training in schools?
Hello, yes, absolutely. That is one of the main areas that we're targeting. So yes, if you are part of a school or your child goes to school and you're quite interested in them learning this skill, please do get in touch. We would love to come and see you.
I'll just check my timekeeper. One more question. I'll have to pick a good one. Okay, let's go for... It's exciting, isn't it? When the cars have to be used, do the drivers have any specialist training similar to the police pursuit drivers? Yes, is the answer to that question. So we all undergo a 3-week emergency response driver training course. Initially, most of us do that with the ambulance service in an ambulance. You'll then be put through an extra bit of training to drive a rapid response vehicle. Apparently my driving isn't up to scratch, but I don't believe it. But yeah, and then we have ongoing checks every couple of years where we do a high-speed drive with a driving instructor to make sure that we are driving correctly. And I think that probably concludes the Q&A. Sorry that wasn't as slick as my previous hour. And let's hope that our next speaker is suitably impressed with our answers for the panel, otherwise good luck tomorrow. So finally, to close this evening, please welcome Chair of EAAA, Sarah Evans.
I'm waiting for a last passing remark. I can't decide whether to be relieved or yeah, disappointed really. Anyway, I'm sure next year you'll come well prepared. I don't know about you, but I feel quite exhausted after listening to all that and seeing just what has been achieved this year. It is phenomenal, and we always seem to be pushing at the boundaries of what is possible in clinical excellence. I am in awe, I have to say, at the dedication and expertise of our staff. Yes, of course, our clinicians and our pilots are superheroes. We know that. But more than that, I'm in awe of the dedication and expertise of every single member of our staff, without whom this charity would not work as effectively and efficiently as it does. Their passion for the work that we do is so palpable, and you've seen some of that this evening. Every time the red phone, actually it's a black phone with a red light on it, but every time the red phone rings and the helicopter takes off, staff across the office take notice and watch its progress with interest. In all my years, there've been a few, of work, I have never seen a passion and a dedication that comes remotely close. But I'm completely overwhelmed by you, our volunteers, supporters and ambassadors, and our donors. Without you, we wouldn't be here at all. Our clinicians couldn't work their magic, and many lives would not be saved. Whether you have given your time as a volunteer, been an ambassador raising awareness and spreading the word, or being generous with a donation or promise of a legacy, we are grateful. The words thank you don't come remotely close to expressing our gratitude or reflecting the importance of your gift. Evenings like tonight are an important way of letting you see what we have been up to and how your generous donations have been spent. I hope we have answered your questions and been able to assure you that every pound or hour donated has been well used. We've been fortunate during the COVID pandemic in the level of support that we've continued to receive. But I confess, and as you've already heard this evening, that inflation, the cost of living crisis and the current state of the UK economy, heaven help us, mean that we are anxious about the next few years. It is going to be a difficult period, and your continued support, in whatever way you can give it, will be more welcome than ever. Thank you so much, whether you're in this room or in our watch parties or online. Thank you so much for joining us this evening for this review of the year. It's a new format aimed at reaching a wider audience, and I hope you've enjoyed it. I'm sure that we will be asking for your feedback to see whether we can make it or how we can make it even better in the future. I will leave you with a bit of a treat, actually. If not, Liam. Paige, as you have heard, was interviewed on BBC yesterday, and that's because she and some of our other members of staff are featuring in a BBC One programme that is going to be aired at 7:30 tomorrow evening, and it's called We Are England, and it's focusing on the staff of some organisations, and EAAA are part of that. It's a one-off episode and a behind-the-scenes look at how our crews respond to life-threatening emergencies. So, star of stage and screen, we have been allowed to show you a snippet of that programme. But do tune in, BBC One tomorrow at 7:30. But here is a taster of what you will see, and I will close with that. Thank you all so very much.
That's it, yeah, go. I'm going to give the full 10 mils. Severe hypoxia though, 40. Still breathing, but very hypoxic. There we go, we've got breathing now.
When you're dealing with a really challenging time-critical case, my priority at that exact moment is to perform to 110%.
When you have your own children, you can absolutely relate to what other families and parents are going through.
Good boy.
Maybe that makes me a better paramedic.
There's no shame, I don't think, about saying that there are some jobs where you do give part of yourself away.
Scratching your arm, buddy.
Please do join in tomorrow and BBC One? BBC One? Check us out. BBC One 7:30. Once again, ladies and gentlemen, your time with me has come to an end. I know you'll all be absolutely heartbroken, but hopefully, if you write lots of nice things on the feedback survey you receive, I'll be back next year, and this time perhaps they'll pay me. Thank you all again for joining us, whether you've come here today or whether you're joining us online or in a cinema somewhere. I'm so humbled to see all of you. I'm so humbled to see our patients joining us too. Stay safe out there. Be kind. Ta-ra for now.